My name is Rachel Hughes. I'm a business manager for Westpac, and welcome to our Westpac Smarts regional real talk, Mayors with a Vision. Westpac Smarts is a year-round speaker series aimed at helping set Kiwi businesses up for success. A big welcome back to everyone who regularly attends, and a warm welcome if you're joining us for the first time. We're privileged today to be joined by Tom Campbell and Ben Bell, who are ready for a deep dive and some questions. So I will hand over to Cherie.
Fabulous, thank you. And yes, thanks to everyone for coming. We've got a very female-dominated audience today, which is very interesting. And Dion from 2 seems to think that's because females are more interested in council stuff, so let's run with that. So health and safety, that's my job. We've got our chamber team here today. We've had all of our drills for the year, so if something happens, it's real. So, follow our team out the front. The evacuation spot we were all meeting is across the road in front of the Invercargill Club, which is the big white building that's probably going to fall down in an earthquake, so I'm not sure why that's our spot, but it's our spot. If there's an earthquake, we get on the ground, under your chairs if you can, and toilets are out front in the foyer by the basketball hoops where you came up. So, welcome to this episode of Westpac Smarts. It's our last one for the year, and a huge thank you to Westpac for your ongoing support of these sessions, which always get a great turnout. We've got a few no-shows today, but that's okay. It is that time of year, and I was actually surprised that we had 70 people that were interested in coming in to hear about RMA reform and rates capping and amalgamation, all those fun council things. So, 2 weeks out for Christmas. So, obviously we've got our 2 recently elected mayors, ICC Mayor Tom Campbell and returning GDC Mayor Ben Bell. We're covering some pretty meaty local government topics today. So I do want to break things up by encouraging some audience questions and participation. So we'll stop in between each section and hopefully you're all still awake and we'll ask some questions, which would be great. Now, just wanted to note that we did try and get Southland District Mayor Rob Scott and our EAS Chair Jeremy McPhail along today, but as you can imagine, getting these guys 4 calendars to align 2 weeks before Christmas was probably never going to happen, so we're grateful for the 2 that we've got, and we hope to do another panel in the new year with them. On your seats there are QR codes which will help us plan for next year, so please, it's a short survey on what you'd like to see as part of these series for next year. We do encourage you to fill it out. We do listen. We haven't got all the ideas, so please let us know. So one thing I just wanted to touch on before we kick in is obviously the RMA reform came out yesterday, late yesterday afternoon. I was at the ILT over 70s dinner looking after the senior citizens and feeding them till about 9 o'clock last night. So I have not read all 8 press releases and 700 pages of that document. So we're not going to talk about that today. But I just wanted to ask Ben and Tom if they did want to touch briefly on, because I'm sure you two would have been up till midnight reading it, on what you've seen so far. Obviously there's a select committee process to go through. It may look different to what it does at the other end when it comes out, but so far, what are your thoughts? Tom, do you want to start?
So, the only thing I would say is that we don't see any fatal flaws so far. Its purpose is to encourage development and growth, and we support that. And obviously what we do is we hunt through it for those things which are going to trip us up, or those things that we really want to put in our submissions to try to get changed. And I've no doubt we'll find some, but we haven't found any yet, so it looks to be pretty much fit for purpose.
Correct. Ben, have you had a chance to have a read?
Yeah, no, I stayed up all night reading the 721 pages of the... No, I didn't. It's a lot of what has already been announced. There's not a whole lot that's new. I guess what is new is that the legislation is actually out now, so it gives a chance for the professionals in the industry, the planners, the lawyers to really analyse it and help us understand what it means. But like Tom said, I think there's a lot of positive stuff in there. The press releases are largely, a whole lot of big promises wrapped in buzzwords. So it's hard to really distinguish what the changes are going to be just yet.
Cool. Thank you. And the other thing I wanted to touch on, which wasn't in our original brief, was yesterday at council, ICC did make a change to their district plan, which is quite big news. Changes to the residential something B Act that Alex told me and I've forgotten already, but it does mean that there will be opportunity to infill with medium and high density. So for me, if I'm in the right area, I've got a quarter-acre section, I can now build lots of houses on my section. What we're hoping this will encourage, from my understanding, is obviously we've got an ageing housing stock. We have not enough houses. Hoping that will encourage some development, and also the areas that I've looked at. You can go on to the council's website, have a wee look in the public agenda that's on there. It's got all the details plus a map of what areas of Invercargill this is going to be affecting. And also what we will do as a chamber is we'll be sending out a survey to get a submission in, which is going to be open in mid-January till mid-February. So it'll be a great opportunity for developers. South City looks to me on the map as the areas that's been identified with the oldest stock ageing housing. So hopefully, you know, in 10 years' time, it will beautify that kind of area and make it more attractive for people to be living in. Is that the idea? Tom, do you want to talk about the reasoning behind it?
I'll comment. We're going to talk about a lot of things today that have, you know, actually been headlines in the paper. You know, rates capping and, you know, changes in the possibility of amalgamation of councils and a whole lot of things. This tsunami of change. I would say that 100 years from now, or 50 years from now even, the thing that's happening which will make the biggest impact in Invercargill is the change that Sherry just talked about. The ability for densification within the city. And although, you know, people get mixed feelings about that when they just hear that word, but the reality is that Invercargill has a shortage of houses. It's got the wrong kind of houses. People who want to move out their 3-bedroom home in a quarter-acre section can't afford to because they can't make enough money from it to go and buy something, you know, smaller, maybe a new, maybe a new apartment. Densification will allow for smaller sections, smaller houses, and hopefully lower cost houses that will allow that to happen. So I think again in 100 years, Sherry, rather than, you know, houses that are by that time 150 years old that are quarter-acre sections and 3 bedrooms, the city might look a bit different, and I think it will be a good change for the city. You'll see nothing within the next 5 or 10 years, I don't think. Maybe the beginnings of it, but in the longer term, it'll have a much bigger impact than all that other, you know, headline stuff that we're going to talk about today.
Great, it's a good decision. Right, this is our opening question, funnily enough. What is one thing that most Southlanders wouldn't know about you, or what you love doing outside the job? Ben?
One thing about me, I probably should have prepared this. One thing about me is I've been training for an Ironman all year. I haven't actually booked one, but I've been doing the training, so in my spare time I am, it's not really torture, but some people would find it torture. I will be on the bike for my wind trainer for 2 to 3 hours, or out on a long run, or any number of crazy things. It's a good way for me to de-stress and think about all of the crazy tsunami of changes that are coming our way.
Do you audiobook or music when you are on the bike?
I'm music, but yesterday morning I actually listened to an audiobook. I don't know if anyone's heard of it, The Chairman's Lounge. It's about the downfall of Qantas and the massive errors that they made in recent years. It's a really good read if anybody wants to listen, if you're a governance nerd like I am.
The other thing that we could do is put the 721 pages into an audiobook from the RLA reform, and you can learn it that way.
Is the chairman making an offer?
We could have some interesting people voice that for you, Tom. What about you?
So I tell this story so many times that probably everybody's heard it, so it probably doesn't meet the test that nobody ever heard it, but I have immigrated to Invercargill 4 times, right? Been through immigration 4 times. And when I say that, people who have had the kind of job where they do move around the world often think, well, I might have done that too. But I've done it from 4 different countries. So the first time we my wife and I immigrated from Scotland to Invercargill in 1981, and then we eventually went and lived in Australia, and then we re-immigrated to Invercargill in 1993, and then we left again, kept looking for better places. We left again, and we went to North Wales in the UK, and we lived there, and then we re-immigrated to Invercargill. And then we went to Canada and lived in Montreal, and we re-immigrated to Invercargill. So I keep trying to find a better place, but I've not succeeded yet. Keep coming back.
Yay! Okay, this is a biggie. So we're here to talk about the vision for, I guess, the region for Southland. What does it look like? So I want to hear from you to what your vision and top 3 priorities for your council are this term. And who wants to kick off? Also, you could incorporate into that one quick win, one big system change that you want to land by year 3.
Yeah, I can go first. So I campaigned probably for my sins pretty heavily on boost and economic development. So Gore and the Gore district is ripe for an economic boom. We've got a brand new library, brand new museums, all the amenities that you need. And we've just about to finish our district plan as well, so there'll be a whole lot of industrial land that's opened up. So really want to encourage that here. Our biggest ratepayers in the area are our milk plants, our freezing works, and the recently built and building wind farms. So if we can attract more like that, that means the people like me and you in the room who have to pay rates pay a little bit less of that overall pie. So that's my big dream and promise I made to my community, so I want to land at least one of those big industries in the district and think I can do it. That's what I want to see for the region. There's so many opportunities here. You talk to ministers up and down the country, they see Southland as the region of opportunity. We're looking at aquaculture, which will be $1 billion industry, massive salmon farms, fish feed, you name it. There's a whole lot of industrial growth here. And our agricultural sector is the backbone. It is what is getting us out of these tough times in the economy. So really supporting that industry to thrive.
Great. So top 3 priorities for the next term. Regional economic development or economic development for your district?
Yeah, smaller ones for me. We are transitioning to a water CCO, so that'll be 1st of July 27, so that's a massive priority for us. And the last one is recycling, which I've already done, but it was last term's priority. So we didn't have a recycling program in Gore, so we've recently turned that back on, and we've got the same as you guys now.
Great, that's good. Tom?
So the election delivered to the City Council probably the youngest and the most diverse and the most progressive council that we have ever had. I mean, we've got 7 men and 5 women at the moment, a mix of ethnicities. And what's been very apparent right from the beginning is how much energy has been in the room. So we've gone through periods of induction and so forth, and there's enormous energy. People really want to do things this term, and they want to work together collegiately, and so it's been said, not least by my own chief executive, but I've heard others say that this is probably the most difficult term that local councils have ever had, because internally there are some major things that we have to deliver on. And for example, our water service delivery plans and the work that flows from that, major pieces of work. And at the same time, there are external forces which are going to create a lot of work for councils. And this famous tsunami of change that was talked about, and I think we're in the 5th wave or the 6th wave or something. I've lost count, but a huge number of announcements from government, all of which will have a significant impact. So this is going to be a very, very busy term for council. We want to do everything, but life kicks in, reality is different. So we're going to have to prioritise. We are going to have to make those system changes which enable what is likely to be government legislation becoming enacted within the next couple of years, and then maybe 2029 before it actually has effect. But we've got to design all those systems before then. That's what we just have to do that. But in terms of things that we want to do ourselves, we must for example, finish the museum and get that open, we must deliver that on budget, and we must make sure that we keep the scope that we originally had, and deliver, you know, really good quality products. So we must do that.
Can you remind us again what the proposed opening date for the museum is?
So it's an interesting story. I'll tell you the story actually, Sue. Right, I'll tell you the story.
You're not going to give me a date, are you?
No, because I'm going to give you a story, right? I'm going to give you a story. So there was so much talk about the opening date of the museum. I looked back in my notes, I could not find what was it. So I don't use AI, right? I'm 25 years too old to use AI, but anyway, but I did use AI and asked the question, what statements have been made about the opening date of the museum since 2022? I never realised AI was so good. It brought up every comment that had ever been made since 2022 about the opening date of the museum. And originally, the earliest time that was publicly spoken about was the end of 26. And then at the beginning of 27, the beginning of 25, that kind of migrated to early 27, right?
Mm-hmm.
So next week there is a paper to council, which will ask council, you know, various options about the opening date of the museum, depending on what we include in the actual opening. And after that meeting, I'll be able to answer your question.
Right. So we will do this again next year, and we will find out the opening date of the museum, which will sometime before 2028.
But it will be on budget, because I'll tell you, there are three dimensions to any big project, right? Any project manager in here knows it. Time, budget, and scope, right? That's the three dimensions. If you get all three of them working together and you deliver on all three, then I want to hire you as a project manager, because you don't often get that. So you say, okay, which is the most important? And for the museum, it probably is budget, because nobody wants to spend any more than you've committed so far, and scope, because they want a high quality.
Yeah.
Right, so the third of those, time, it may take a little longer.
Good, thanks for the warning.
The moral of that story is that you only ever get two of the three.
Absolutely. And I am lucky enough to be going for a tour of the museum on Thursday next week for the ILT meeting, so I'm looking forward to that. Right, some meaty topics. Topic 1, rates caps, very exciting. And what it means locally. So last week the government announced it will cap council rates. I'm sure you've all heard it on the news, read it in the papers. What does it mean for us actually? So it will cap council rates increases inside a targeted band of between 2 and 4% per person per year. Is it per household? Per person per household per year. With a hard maximum of 4%. Is it per person?
No, it's
Per household, yeah, that's right.
Well, it'll be the average across all, across all.
Yeah. Hard maximum 4% unless a regulator signs off for extreme cases like a disaster and we need to fix the whole city, then of course our rates would have to go up. The cap covers all rates, general, targeted and the uniform charge, but excludes water charges and other non-rates revenue like fees. The plan starts with a transition from January 2027, so not even next year, with a full regime operating in 2029. So this is one thing that Tom and I talked about earlier, is when people were seeing all of these announcements come through from government at the moment, all of a sudden in our brains we think, oh, that's going to happen tomorrow. But it's really important to realise that the dates are 2 or 3 years away. So when we get our rates bills next year, they won't have a 4% cap on them. And that there is, I guess there's fear, or there's been scaremongering in the media around the fact that councils are now going to do as much as they can to get like a 1,000,000% rates rise next year, get all their stuff done so that they can fit it in before this actually kicks in. What does it mean on the ground? For councils, it means likely reprioritising, which Tom, you've talked about a little bit, delaying or scaling back on some projects, trimming our nice to haves, and looking harder at fees or partnerships, because there is only so much money in the pot. So firstly, this is my big thing, because I live in Invercargill, because we don't have water rates and I don't get a separate bill. But because this excludes water charges, Am I right in guessing that one of the first moves that is likely to increase revenue for councils would be for you to introduce a water rate charge like some other councils, say Auckland? Is this on the cards for our council, for ICC and for GDC?
That's
You want to go first?
me.
Yeah.
Okay, so we already do separate out, and under the new legislation, we are required to very explicitly, so all water related things have got to be ring fenced, and all the charges are going to be strictly kept in that box, and any other charge are going to be strictly kept in a separate box. Now for those councils that have set up CCOs, and obviously Gore's one of them, it will be, I would imagine, you'll get a separate water bill. So Invercargill has not done that, but what will happen is you will be able to see the water charge separately.
But will it
so
be
it's-
based on the amount, you know, I do leave my water running when I brush my teeth? People in Auckland don't do that because they get a bill for the amount of water, like as it's averaged out, you get a line in your rates bill that says water, but it doesn't matter how much I use. Am I going to be charged for the amount of water I use?
No, because we don't have water meters yet.
Okay.
But I will just add though that my own view, I mean, water meters will probably happen because they're great for getting people to switch off the taps and you know, identify where leaks occur, because if people have got higher charges, they're going to complaining, we're going to find the leak. But most of the cost of providing water has nothing to do with the water, it's infrastructure that's going to be put in place to deliver it. And whether you use a pint of water a day or a gallon of water a day, you've still got the same infrastructure delivering it. So the bulk of the charge, it would never be a straight line relationship between how much you use.
Right.
It's like line charges, exactly the same as line charges. The fact you use less electricity doesn't mean your line charge is that much lower. It's the cost of putting in the line that's reflected.
Yeah.
I forget your original question. So the
will,
answer is
will we end up
maybe.
with rates? Maybe.
Uh,
You're a
so-
yes, no, don't know yet, maybe.
Will we end up with what?
With a separate, like water meters was where I was
Oh,
going. One day maybe.
so water meters are included in the long-term plan for Invercargill, but there is no project approval for an individual project yet. So it's still going to be debated, I would think, probably in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ben, what's your water looking like in Gore?
Yeah, so we're a little bit different, obviously, because we're doing the water CCO. So people will get a separate rates bill. That water rate bill will go to the CCO, so they can deliver for the councils that are involved. We're the same as Tom. We don't have water meters, but we're a little bit complicated because Central Otago does. So I imagine that we will have to move towards water meters over time. Personally, I know they're quite controversial, but I think they're a good idea. Whether you are a pensioner who showers maybe once every couple of days to try and conserve water, or someone who has a pool and has a beautiful garden and things, they pay the same amount for water. So it really should be more user pays, but like Tom says, in terms of the savings that you get, it's not a huge amount different, other than being able to fix the leaks with the infrastructure. Central Otago, when they switched over, I think saved 35% in water leaks, basically within the first 6 months, just because people, it seemed like they had their taps on constantly.
Yeah.
They didn't have any taps on in the house, it was their pipe that was leaking out the front.
Good to know, good to know. Okay, here's the biggie. If you must live within your 2 to 4% cap, what are the first two levers that you would pull to protect core services, sequencing CapEx, efficiency savings, service level changes, or new partnerships, and why? And which programs would you classify as nice to haves that could be paused without undermining essentials like road, rubbish, water, flood protection? Yeah, like, are we going to be shutting down libraries and things? What's happening?
Yeah, so happy to answer that one first. So for the Gore district, my chief executive's not in the room, so I guess I'll off. We'll probably be okay, I'm hoping. So
What was your rates increase this year?
This year it was 8.8. The incoming year we'll have an 11, and then we have another 8, but then we're into 6s and 5s. So if you actually, so that all includes water. So if you take water out of that, which isn't capped, that immediately will come down. A lot of that increase is water, because we've got to catch up in terms of infrastructure. So my guess, guess and an educated guess is after 2029 we will be able to keep that under 4%. However, that's in an ideal world, and we know that we don't live in an ideal world, and that when we reset long-term plans, all of those costs go up. So What I'll be advocating to my council to submit to government is there are things that shouldn't be capped. I think water is absolutely one of them, but as it currently stands, both roading and also solid waste will also be capped. So these are costs that we largely can't control. Roads need to be maintained, and to be honest, we're probably a little bit behind in that work program as well. And then rubbish or solid waste, we are legislatively required to collect that and dispose of it. So if you cap those, then if those costs go up, you have to find savings elsewhere, and that does lead to your service level costs and libraries, pools, and all the other things that we love.
Great. That was a good answer. What about you, Tom?
So last year, our non-water rates increase was actually within that range. It was 3 point, help me out, 4, wasn't it?
3.71.
3.71. So we were actually within that range last year. It was water that dragged it up. So that when government says you've got to be between 2 and 4, but everything except water, for a lot of councils they already are sort of within that range. It's water that's dragged it up. So it's, it's not an answer to increasing how much you pay. The I think what it will do though is I think you'll see a progressive increase in the user pays, so that what at the moment tends to be absorbed to some extent into general rates. There'll be, I think, an increase in a movement towards user pays.
Oh, are we going to get charged to go to our museum?
No. Depends where
That
you
would
live.
be a good one to start though.
Well, no, but look, that decision hasn't been taken yet. So it's a personal answer.
Yeah.
No, right? But the it depends where you live. If you live in Timbuktu, probably.
Yeah.
Not sure about Winton. So what was your first question again?
It was about what programs would you classify as nice to haves that could be paused, but from what I'm hearing from both of you is that with taking your water out, you're pretty much there anyway.
Yeah, there's one other aspect I would say though, and we're already working hard on this. So a fair bit of your rates is to do with how much risk council are prepared to take in making decisions. And what I mean by that is that suppose you spend an Invercargill, suppose we spend $2 million on consultants, right? Well, that's 3% in your rates. If you decide to make a decision based on the recommendation of staff and not get a consultants,
Doesn't
that's
that just mean
3%
that you're
less.
employing the wrong staff?
No, it doesn't. It means that council, in setting its risk appetite, sets that appetite too low, right? So staff feel obliged to bring consultant supporting,
Right.
right? So if you say to staff, look, we're prepared to support your judgment rather than do that, then the size of that prize within Invercargill is probably 3% of the rates. So that makes a big difference.
Yeah. We've got
So
some
that's
great
an
staff at
obvious
the council.
target for us. Pardon?
We've got some great staff at the council, and so you're saying you could the risk is to trust their judgment and their experience rather than them having to rely on bringing
Yeah,
consultants in.
and risk is actually a political judgment. It's a councillor judgment. It's not a staff judgment.
Yeah.
So it's not their fault that they're bringing.
Yeah.
Right. It's not anybody's fault. But but the people who can change it actually is council itself
Yes.
saying we wish to trust your judgment. We don't want you to go to consultants.
And so is the appetite around the council table, your new council, to do that?
Yeah, I believe so, but I mean it'll be probably debated before. So in the new year we've got a debate on exactly that.
Right.
It just means do we lower the risk threshold a little bit? Or?
Right, we are pausing for an audience Q&A. Does anyone have anything on any topics that Vanessa?
Thank you. You spoke earlier about the quarter acre drain and the changes to RNA and obvious benefits around economic growth, medium to high density housing, and there are certainly pros within that. One of the unintended consequences.
Vanessa, speak up a little bit.
One of the unintended consequences of medium to high intensity growth is the possible risk of loss of green space.
Yeah.
So as we reduce the amount of play, backyard play that we can have with our families, the less likely we are to engage in things that create health and well-being. So my question is around how can councils protect accessibility, no matter where we live, in our city or in our district. How can we protect access to equitable green space within walkability for everyone?
Great question. Did you pick up on that, Tom?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, actually, Vanessa, that should not be an issue. The reality is that there are a large number of spaces available for putting, foreseeable housing growth without getting into those areas that you're talking about. Now, the council does own pieces of land, which may end up being, developed for housing. But we're not talking about, reserves or consequences of them. I'm excluding, we can deal with Donovan Circle if you want, but leaving that aside, there are little patches that just happen to be vacant, so somebody sticks a goalpost on it or something. But there are a large number of opportunities for infilling in Invercargill without having to go, to use more green space, and that's pretty much exactly the reason why we're making that plan change, so that you can have smaller sections and you can do more infill, because we want to bring people into the city, not push them out into areas that are at the moment green and are used for recreation.
Vanessa, have you had a chance to have a look at the plan, the map on where they're going to be doing it, and have you looked at whether there's walkable parks close to by the areas that they're, that would be a great thing to be doing for the submission that we're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, and it's, the question is also for now, but it's also, I think about my kids and my kids' kids, and think about how do we protect that in the future, given we're already seeing sections in houses 400 to 500 square metres with a slither of grass that can barely fit a trampoline on, that may or may not in 50 years' time have access to a walkable green space. So how do we think about what the future looks like as much as now?
Do you know if that was considered when the planning was done?
Well,
Tom?
actually the Zone 1 and Zone 1A that's affected by it is just a big area of the map. It doesn't actually split out, recreation areas or anything like that. So the fact it's included in the colour doesn't mean it's intended to build it. It just means that happens to be the area in Invercargill. But one thing I would say, and it doesn't exactly go to your question, Vanessa, but so last week it was the centenary of the opening of the Cenotaph, right? So in 1925 they opened the Cenotaph. It made me look up the population at the time. So 100 years ago, Invercargill had 18,000 people. Now we've got 54. So we've tripled it, right, in 100 years. In 100 years' time, there's no reason to think it's not going to happen again. It'll be triple again. There'll be 150,000 people, 160,000 lived in Invercargill by that time. We've got to live somewhere. And if we don't want to just keep pushing out, then probably it's increased densification and building upwards to some extent. That's the choices that we face.
Anybody else got any other questions?
So can I just add on that as well? So within your district plan, it will also have provisions around how the level of density relative to how far away a reserve or a playground is. So you can't build a whole plot of houses in an area and not have a playground or a reserve for that exact reason. So that's protected within a slightly different area, so you can intensify those single plots, but they still have to be within a zone that has a playground in it.
That's good to know. Right, topic 2, regional council announcement. So, when I first heard this, probably sure, like everybody else, you thought, oh, they're getting rid of Environment Southland, all the people are going to be unemployed and we've got nowhere to put them, what are we going to do, this is disaster. But no, that is not what happened with the regional council announcement. So my understanding is, and just so that you all understand, what that means for us locally, under the government's proposal, and it is just a proposal at the moment, Environment Southland would remain as is, as a separate entity, same staff, same buildings, just CEO doing what they're doing now, but the councillors that we just elected in would disappear, and Ben and Tom and Rob Scott would run it. And I'm pretty sure that's not what they signed up for when they were elected. But however, now you've got possibly got another job. So I'm just interested on, there's also a whole population weighted voting thing that's going to make things interesting. I'm guessing you guys will be submitting on this from your different councils. What are your thoughts on this? Should it go through? It obviously is going to add a lot more complexity and work to the role that you originally campaigned to take on. Given it's only recent, your councils may still be yet to decide on how you're going to submit or what your thoughts are. But knowing what you know now, do you think that that ICC, GDC and SDC will submit with differing views on how this should work for our region, or do you think you'll all align on the same view on behalf of the region and kind of be in agreement when you submit? And it may be too early to answer that, but I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on where you are thinking at the moment, or even if you've had any of those discussions with your council at this stage.
I can jump in first. No, we haven't. I mean, if I'm brutally honest, I don't think we particularly understand the change that they're trying to make. I think we can understand the theory, but how it's going to play out practically, I don't know if you've got any additional money in your bank account, Tom, from the government as to how we're going to be paid for this. Doing an entirely extra job, but yeah, it's still yet to be seen. I hope we do a joint submission. There will be things that we can agree on. There's obviously always things that we can't agree on as well, but it saves us all time if we can submit together. But yeah, we really have to sit down. I mean, the changes to the RMA, that's 721 pages worth of information. That'll also tell us what the regional council still does and what it doesn't do anymore. There are some centralised bodies that are being set up that will work as the regulator, so that won't be managed locally anymore. So there's a lot of water to go under the bridge between now and the 20th of February. So if anybody wants to work over Christmas, feel more than welcome.
It's pretty mean of them to dump all of their changes on you.
They always do. They always do.
Fairly
Yeah.
coincidental. Oh.
John, what are your thoughts on this? Are you as confused as we all are?
Look, I don't know about confused. I mean, let's separate the two. We're not talking here about the amalgamation idea.
No.
You know, we're going to talk about that later. We're talking about the fact that the governance body of Environment Southland will disappear. The Environment Southland staff themselves will still continue to do what they do, but the governance body will disappear at some point and be replaced by the 3 mayors, right? So the 12, I think it's 12, isn't it, existing Environment Southland councillors will be replaced by the 3 mayors who've got nothing else to do anyway, right? Now, the reality is that I don't think there's a mayor in the country that's working less than probably 50 hours a week. You know, they're probably kind of lucky. At least a third of that time, in my case, at least a third of that time is actually community engagements. It's like this sort of thing. And the other 2/3 is stuff that we actually have to do as mayor. Nobody else can do it, right? So the bit that, if we graft on, say another 15 hours a week, you know, for doing Environment Southland governance work, then the bit that will go is community engagement.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing else can go. So I think that the inevitable impact, if they actually persevere in doing this track, is that the mayors will become increasingly distant from their communities because they just will not be able to.
You'll all be swamped in paperwork.
They just will not be able to do everything. Yeah, I don't know whether the government will think twice. It seems like it seems like a daft idea.
It was a really weird idea. Did anyone see this coming? Because I thought if they were going to make an announcement, they would have just taken out all the regional councils or brought them back in within council. But this is, I just don't know the reason or see the point of it. Like all you've done is just get rid of the governance.
Yeah, you've got a government who doesn't like regional councils and doesn't like some of the decisions
So you think they just killed them all together?
Yeah, throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? I think regardless of how you feel about regional councils, the proposal, I do think it is extremely unfair to the elected members who only got elected 2 months ago. You know, Jeremy as a chair only got elected a couple of weeks before this announcement comes, and they could all be unemployed in 2 years' time. Right? And this is going to completely shroud their entire term that they have. When they're democratically elected and that's not what they signed up for. I think it's harsh, I think it's unfair. Will it provide better outcomes? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Well, look, if I can comment, but I mean, the only logic I can see behind it is if governments just want to hurry along amalgamation and they're handing the mayors such a poison chalice, you know, that we're going to be forced to push towards amalgamation
Yeah.
faster. I mean, that makes some sort of sense to me. It's not a good thing, but it makes sense that they might do that, because there's no doubt in my mind that, you know, for Rob, Ben and I to take over all of the work of 12 councillors, including the chair, and still be the mayor of TAs is, you know, I think a ridiculous proposition.
Yeah.
And if we're named, it's like being, you know, you can say you can delegate, but if I'm the named, suppose I'm a named councillor at the moment, I can't send my wife to take my place to a council meeting, right? You know, you're the, so it will not be us three. It will not be a matter of delegating, as it's written at the moment. We cannot delegate it to another councillor. We'll
So you
have
can't
be
even
as
give it to your
is.
deputies to go and be there?
Well, not as it's written at the moment.
Right. Yeah, it is very strange. Let's see how this plays out, because I'm guessing that the majority of the councils around New Zealand will not be putting positive submissions in on that one. Has anyone got any questions around ES on that? No, or regional, right. So, this is a good topic too, amalgamation. Reorganisation, where do the councils stand? So, where we're at the moment, for those of you in the room that are unsure, SDC has advanced its reorganisation case to move from our 4 councils, so that's ES, SDC, ICC, GDC, to 2 unitary authorities, so we'll just have 2 councils, which means that ICC would be our city council and Southland and or would combine as a rural council. What happens with ES under this plan? Do they just get absorbed in there
Get
somewhere?
absorbed.
They are citing a potential efficiencies of at least $10 million in regional savings, fewer plans and duplication, and strengthened local voice via empowered community boards. Gore, on the other hand, has formally written to Local Government Commission, raising concerns with the current Southland-only amalgamation concept, saying the scale may be too small to realise savings, warning of transition costs, timing, clashes with the current water reforms we're all having to deal with, the risk to local voice, and you've noted cross-boundary ties with Otago, so shared water initiatives and things like that, suggesting the only viable model might need to be a broader footprint. Ben, can you give us an update on where this is at and the process that will take place and the timeline? So my understanding is there's a commissioner that's going to come to town and talk to the councils for a day or something, and then meet with stakeholders, and then you'll find out what the decision is. Is that how it's kind of going to run?
Not quite, and I'll take a little bit of dramatic flare out. We all wrote to the Local Government Commission as part of our reply to the original proposal by Southland. I guess our concerns are probably a little bit unique to everybody else. As you'll see from the conversations today, and I said to these guys, you know, we're a little bit of a piggy in the middle at the moment, by our own fault of following all of the government's demands. So we are sharing our waters with Central Otago and Clutha, and now the proposal is to share a regional council with Southland and Invercargill. So you can imagine how stretched my time is at the moment. I spend some of my days in Otago and some of my days down here, and try and spend as much in my own district as well. So I guess a lot has changed since Rob first put forward that proposal. I think a conversation absolutely needs to happen, but I do wonder now, with the changes that are coming, the necessity and the benefit of it, right? So one of the key priorities for that proposal was to get rid of the regional council, to reduce a lot of the duplication there. That's obviously in train based on the government announcements anyway. The $10 million that was cited was things like combining plans and making everything more efficient in that regard. That's already happening with the changes to the RMA. So we're going to have to come up with all that spare time that we have with a new regional spatial plan, which will lead into regionalised district plans as well. So a lot of that work's already being done. I have worries about how much money we will spend in that transition. You know, amalgamations aren't cheap. They might be beneficial in the long run, absolutely, but up front they're quite expensive. To give you an example, the water transition alone, which is only a part of our business, we're looking at about $8 million worth of transition costs between the 3 councils. So it's a massive cost to amalgamate councils together. When you're talking about entire services, that number gets exponentially bigger.
I guess from a ratepayer point of view, or a layman who's sitting at home, they see 4 council buildings, 4 CEOs, 4 management teams, 4 lots of everything. They get all of the different bills and they're like, well, that makes sense to be one. But, you know, obviously it's a lot more complex than that. It is interesting that the government is kind of coming up with these announcements which might now change where we're sitting. Tom, we talked previously about the commissioner coming to town. Is that still going to happen? Do you think that's going to happen now that the government's made these changes, or do you think
Yes,
that'll
it will.
pause? Okay.
So the local government commission, I don't know how many of them are, but I'll use plural commissioners, come here next week, come to Southland next week. The 3 mayors, the 4 mayors, the 3 mayors, the chair, and the chief executives have got a meeting with him or her. I don't know whether it's a man or a woman, but anyway, next Tuesday, and that's at the Mariah Bluff, actually. And I think there's a number of other stakeholders. So, I mean, we have, when this process was kicked off, really by Mayor Scott, then it was before government had made, you know, the announcements that they had. So an obvious question was, given that this is happening parallel by government, and it might be we end up with some kind of mandated amalgamation. I think that's highly likely, actually. We might end up with some kind of mandated amalgamation. Does it make sense for the commission to be here doing work running in parallel to that? And I think where we've landed, we have talked about it, and where we've landed is that it is better for them to continue to do that. The transition period to anything that might be new, given what we've just talked about with ES and mayors acting in some ways, given the unsatisfactory nature of that, the quicker we can get to a final solution in respect to amalgamation, the better. So if we can, through the work that the Commission is going to be doing with us over the next year or so, if we can get to a solution which we can implement earlier, then I think that would be a good thing for Southland. Now, what that solution looks like, Invercargill City Council have not landed in any position at this point. The only thing that we have said is that we support the concept of amalgamation, but we don't advocate for any particular model. But we've asked that the Commission should look at a range of models rather than only the one that STC put up.
So does the Commission, when they come up with a range of models, do they have a recommendation, and then people, like, how does the process work? Is there a referendum, or do they just decide and have it?
So it is not something that's decided by council. Council is kind of, you know, I'll not say marginalised by it. I mean, obviously we're in there, we've got a say, but we've got no more say than, say, the Chamber of Commerce would have, right? So all the interest groups are all consulted and they're all weighed equally. At the end of the process, I don't know if they come up with one. I think there's only one option, isn't it? They just come up with one option, I think. I don't think they put multiple options. But it would go, if it's done through the Commission, it would go to some form of referendum.
Right.
If it's done by government, then it would just be the law.
Right.
Right. So as we sit here at the moment, given that there's 2 parallel kind of paths, the Commission path and the government path, and I'm no doubt they're speaking to one another. If government decided to enact to amalgamate councils, then the public would not get
we wouldn't get a vote.
But if it's done in that more sort of voluntary way, then they would.
So I'll just add to that. So the process with the local government commission, there's actually a number of thresholds that have to be met along the way, and at any time the process could end. So even though we're going through this process with the local government commission, they actually might find that we've got a solution for you in the interim. That doesn't mean we have to amalgamate, if you want to use that word, or reorganise councils. So the process will end. So we may never get to a referendum. We may have something put in front of us that actually stops that process, or it could be that this other process that's coming through from central government actually dictates the path that we end up taking.
Right. So at any stage, the threshold, so they could come next week, talk to everyone, and they decide everything's fine.
I wouldn't say it would be that soon.
Okay.
There's a lot of work.
They're not going to run away that quick. Right.
I think the process is supposed to last a year, isn't it?
So yeah, because they've got to do really in-depth dives of each of the different stakeholders, get each of the councils to hand over their financials and analyse what they would look like together, look at the different options, come up with the best option, and then it is that consultation.
You guys went to play
So the
with?
Local Government Commission have said that they're going to exhaust basically all of their budget for the next 2 years on this project, but yes, there will have to be contributions in terms of staff time
Yeah.
from the council. So they're
It's a
looking at
lot of
about
staff time.
it's about 1 to 1.5 FTEs per council. So yeah, it's but that's in the greater good of
Yeah.
trying to
Getting
find
it
the best
right,
solution moving
exactly.
forward. Yeah.
But I think if you step, if I'm just that though, Sherry, if you step back far enough and leave aside the fact at the moment that, you know, this is a difficult decision for, if it was councils, it'd be a really difficult decision
Yeah.
because, you know, some would disappear and others would not. But if you look at it from far enough back, then having 4 councils for 100,000 people, you know, seems a bit excessive, right?
Yeah.
So the kind of direction of travel is towards amalgamation. In this day and age where everything's data and you can, you know, we're not sending messages and 40 sticks with, you know, it should be possible to run Southland with fewer in my view.
I do see the concerns that I think GDC put in there around, you know, coming from I grew up in Tuatapere and I've got property out in, you know, Gore and Riversdale, that the local voice when you are out somewhere like in a rural community and you know, you feel like the big boys in town are making decisions based on, you know, I can see, you know, it would be interesting to see the referendum if there was, the recommendation was to have one, how the rural and city vote on that, and where we end up. So, yeah, there's a lot happening. You guys aren't even going to get a Christmas break.
And
Right.
the funny thing, Cherie, was one of your questions was what do you do in your spare time?
Yeah, I don't. I don't think that you've got any spare time. Right. What is our time? We have 2 last things we're going to talk about. They are 60 seconds, quick fire. You don't even need to take that long if you don't want to. Biggest challenge for your council, 25 to 28, 2025 to 28, so the next 3 years. Biggest opportunity for the region in the next 5 years, and you're not allowed to say aquaculture.
Why?
Because we want you to pick something else other than aquaculture, which we know is the biggest opportunity. What else is it on the cards?
I'll jump in with opportunity before Tom does, and I will say power. Power generation in this region, there's a huge amount of potential. There's 3 massive wind farms that I know of that are going ahead, solar farms, which then leads to data centres and all sorts of processing. So renewable energy is massive, massive down this way.
Pretty exciting, hey? Tommy, Stowe Power, what have you got?
So, look, it's not one thing, but I want to give you a criteria. Southland, for many years, has had the lowest and nearly the lowest unemployment rate in New Zealand. And we've got the highest participation rate, which means that of those people who are able to work, you know, the highest proportion are actually in work. We've got youth unemployment, I know that. But in terms of the overall population, so what we don't need really is just jobs. What we need is high paid jobs. Because we don't need it, it's not volume, it's value really. So when we think about industries that might come here, you know, a question that I always think about, and sometimes just straightforwardly ask them, is, you know, what kind of salaries do you pay in, you know, where you're already operating? Because bringing in low paid work isn't actually going to be any use to it. So somebody who comes and says, look, I've got this fantastic opportunity, 1,000 jobs and so forth, and when you dig down you find that the reason they're interested in Invercargill is because it's relatively low paid compared to other parts of New Zealand, so they think the labour rates will be lower, and that's no good to us. You know, we want high paid
No,
jobs.
we do. So, did you answer that question?
What?
Biggest opportunity?
Like the biggest opportunity, and I'm not going to resile from saying, I mean, the biggest opportunity is aquaculture, there's no question about that. and I know I'm not allowed to say it, but you asked the biggest.
Yeah, it is.
And
It's exciting.
let me just add 1 minute to that, and that is that Southland stands, we used to always say stands, it's like standing in a 2-legged stool. You know, tea wine and terra, you know, milk powder.
Mm-hmm.
And two-legged stools are fundamentally unstable, particularly if it's commodities. You need to add a third stool. So one thing we looked very hard at the days that sorted this was big enough to add a third leg. There's a lot of smaller things that you could add, but what's big enough that could add a third leg? And the only thing that we could find was aquaculture. It was literally the only thing that would be big enough that could maybe even be twice the size of TY in terms of number of people employed.
Which is exciting, and for those of you who are lucky enough to come to Westpac Smarts, I think it was the last one, we had Bobby Brown from Great South. She was running through an update of Beyond 2025, which is the Southland's regional strategy for Southland, and aquaculture obviously is a big part of the work. She's also released the Southland Aquaculture Strategy, which actually is a really good read and not as boring as the 721 pages of the RMA report. If anyone wants a copy of that, it is online. So it goes into the types of jobs, the investment, all of the exciting things, the different types of aquaculture from seaweed to salmon to everything. So it's pretty exciting. Is your biggest challenge, because neither of you answered this, would it be water? And apart from all the other random stuff that's being thrown at you from government at the moment, water must be the biggest thing at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely for us. I mean, we've got to transition almost a third of our business into a CCO, so that's, you can imagine the challenges with that. Yeah, changing wastewater standards, changing drinking water standards, and all of our infrastructure is failing slowly. So yeah, massive issues in that area.
Tom, water for you as well is the biggest challenge? Apart from getting an opening date on the museum?
No, it is, the biggest single project that we're likely undertaking in the next 10 years is what we need to do in Clifton for the wastewater plant there. And that could be a $100 million project, or it could be 50 million if we find out, it could be 100, or it could be 200, right? Okay. So it's massive for the city. 200 would double the debt, more than double the debt of the city just for one wastewater plant. So that has to be the biggest actually challenge that we've got. How we can do that in the most elegant way that actually meets the standards.
Any questions before I wrap up on any of the things we've talked about so far? Yes.
Hi Ben. Local government. I haven't seen anything, but I hear that you are chair of local government rural.
Chair of Local Government Rural?
Yes, I am the Local Government New Zealand Chair of Rural. Yep.
Tell me more about that role and what you're doing and how are you connected to the rural?
Absolutely, thank you for that question. Yes, so very, very privileged to be elected to that role. So for anyone who doesn't know, Local Government New Zealand is the overarching body of local government. There are lots of councils across the country that are members. You can kind of think of it almost like our union, if you want to think of it like that. And we have lots of sectors. So we have the metro sector, which is your cities, your provincial, which is your big areas, and then your rural sector, which is, I think it's anything under 15,000, so you're really small councils. So I'm somewhat in charge of them. I get to run the meetings when we have them in Wellington or around the place. That includes engaging with ministers, so making sure I'm talking to Mark Patterson, who's the Minister for Rural Communities often, trying to get in front of the Minister of Agriculture when I can, and also linking into those rural groups such as Fed Farmers or Groundswell, or which luckily are all on my doorstep. So it makes that job very easy. So very excited to take on that role as well.
In your spare time?
In my spare time, yes, and I should probably also say I've recently been elected the chair of Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, which I'm very excited about. So MTFJ is a $9 million contract across the country that we share with MSD, where we deliver outcomes for 16 to 24-year-olds. So we have staff within our councils that are funded by MSD that help place kids into work. So we've got a target of about 1,000 across the country, which we're well on track to do. So that's a very exciting program I get to be a part of as well.
Cool. And Great South run that down here as well, don't they?
Yes, Great South. Yeah, Great South run the contract. They've actually almost hit their quota already 6 months in advance. So very, very well done to them. We have it internally, and Cliff have it as well. Invercargill's a little bit too big to have it.
No, it's a great program.
At the moment, we'll try to get them on board.
Right, I need to let you all go back to work. Firstly, before I do, is there anything that you two would like to add before I wrap up? No, you're all good?
Yep.
Just a massive thank you for everyone showing up and listening to the boring world of local government. There's a huge amount of change coming, so please, if you have any questions, I'm sure Tom is just as accessible as I am. Email them through, text, phone, whatever it is. Sheree also has our contact details as well, so please ask. We probably don't have the answers, but we'll try our best.
Thank you. And we are extremely lucky in Southland to have very accessible mayors who always turn up when they can to events like this and happy to sit here and take some flack from me and answer random questions. So I think we're incredibly grateful that you're both coming along today, so thank you so much. So the Chamber's starting a business council next year, early in the year. This is part of Alex Cricket, so she's, I'm not sure what portfolio you've got that's brought this on, but Infrastructure and Growth is the one, and as part of that, the council's really interested in engaging with business, which is great, and I'm very excited that this is happening. So what we'd like to do is put together a small core group of business people that will advise council basically on where they see benefits of it. What I don't want this to be is like a bitch session where you come along with just your own business and go, no, the council pissed me off one time about something. We would like people that are interested in representing the industry who have, I guess, very future focused ideas on ways that the council can enable your industry to help for what is coming next in the next 5 to 10 years, is something Alex and I discussed. So if you are interested in being part of that, we have first workshop with all of the councillors is going to be on the 24th of March. So at the moment I'm taking expressions of interest. I'd like to try and get a really good, I guess, look at what the region's going to need in the next 5 years when it comes to business, and then try and pick the industries that will be, it will be an ever evolving group depending on what's happening in the region at the time. But anyway, if you're interested in being part of that, because you're obviously all interested in local government, because you're all turned up today, then please get in touch with me, and we'll be putting that together in the new year. And my last thing to do is to say, make sure that you definitely fill out your survey so we won't know what we're doing next year on your QR codes. And a huge thank you to Westpac. So Westpac has been an amazing sponsor of these panels. We do hope that you find them informative. They're not here to entertain, they're here to inform. We do lots of other things to entertain you. This isn't one of them. It's an information. It's to make sure that the business community is aware of what's happening in our region, whether it's with economic development or local council or all of the other topics that we've covered in the last year or so. So we will be back next year with Westpac Smarts, thankfully. And that's all from me. Have a nice rest of your day and a very, very Merry Christmas.